Hello, Canadian football fans, and welcome to another look at a season of CFL All-Stars. We've looked at 1993, 1976, 1987, and recently 1972. And we're going back to the 1990s in the year 1990. As per usual, we'll be covering the Western Division first and the Eastern Division second. And like those videos, we'll be keeping track as to who are among the all-Canadian selections out of these divisional selections. And yes, indeed, special teams in this era do count, on like 1972. And now it's just 12 on each side, like the regular positions for offense and defense, plus the 3 special team selections. But first, we're going to take a look at what's going on in the entertainment industry in Canada in 1990. On CBC, the kids of Degrassi Junior High continue to mature and grow up with a new series, Degrassi High, as they move to the rigors of high school. The show was still a ratings juggernaut for CBC despite the change, with the use of captivating storylines tackling big issues such as abortion, abuse, and pill addiction, just to name a few. Also, a new unique comedy troupe hit the airwaves with the sketch comedy show The Kids in the Hall, wrapping up a successful first season, going beyond a cult following and becoming a ratings hit. The Kids in the Hall troupe of Scott Thompson, Dave Foley, Bruce McCullough, Kevin McDonald, and Mark McKinney, with their unique surreal humor, became immensely popular. However, a show that I mentioned a few times on this CFL series, The Beachcombers, on December 12, 1990, came to an end. The iconic show, after 19 seasons and 387 episodes, is truly a journey. The finale still holds the record for most viewers to watch a series finale of a Canadian TV show. But Canadian TV was still going strong on other networks. YTV, youth television based out of Toronto, which only existed for 2 years at this point, would debut one of its most popular and iconic shows, the children's-friendly horror anthology series, Are You Afraid of the Dark? Its pilot episode debuted this year, though the show would not get picked up full-time permanently until 1992. It became a huge part of Canadian popular culture. And speaking of Ontario-based television, City TV. Speaker's Corner. That's right, a public forum to speak in front of cameras, sharing thoughts, rants, making jokes, and inspiring musicians performing, shoutouts, you name it. Despite the simple concept, its debut in 1990 would stretch all the way to 2008. And also, speaking of Chum Associated TV, in Toronto, Much Music, the nation's music station, continued to bring in huge numbers day after day. And now shifting to movies. One of Canada's finest actors, no doubt of all time, is Donald Sutherland, who has had quite the career. And he played Dr. Norman Bethune this year, the Canadian-born surgeon who served as a combat surgeon during the Chinese Civil War in the late 1930s. Sutherland had played Bethune twice before, once in a TV docuseries in the mid-1970s and then a 1977 TV movie. The film was highly acclaimed by critics and did pretty well in the Canadian box office. Donald's son, however, Kiefer Sutherland, was also riding high in his career, continuing to appear in big films. This year he appeared in Flatliners with an ensemble cast, co-starring with Julia Roberts, Oliver Platt, William Baldwin, and Kevin Bacon. It was a box office hit. And lastly, Dances with Wolves, the mega box office blockbuster and critically acclaimed hit, which starred Kevin Costner in a film about a Civil War-era Western about a Union soldier who travels to the American frontier and meets a group of Lakota natives. But the big story here in Canada, however, was the scene-stealing performance of Graham Greene as Kicking Bird. Greene, the Six Nations native born in Oswego, Ontario, earned himself an Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. In Canadian music, Alana Miles, who rocked the scene in 1989 with her worldwide smash hit Black Velvet, continued to dominate Canadian airwaves. She had a massive #2 hit with the power ballad Lover of Mine, being one of the most played songs on Canadian radio that year, and saw heavy rotation on Much Music. Another huge song that dominated the airwaves on both television and radio was rock group Alias with another power ballad, More Than Words Can Say. The group had a handful of hits off their self-titled debut album and was led by former Sheriff members, operatic lead vocalist and frontman Freddie Curci, and superb guitar player, very underrated Steve DeMarchi. The song soared to #1 in Canada, and the song was a massive hit in the US as well, reaching #2. Blue Rodeo released their highly anticipated third studio album, Casino, which hit #6 on the Canadian album charts in late 1990, and they had a #3 hit single with Till I Am Myself Again. The album reached double platinum status. Neil Young, who began a comeback in the late 80s, continued to soar, released a new album with backing band Crazy Horse called Ragged Glory, which seemed to be the group's take on the new grunge sound that was starting to cause a stir. The album was acclaimed by critics and reached #20 in Canada and was certified gold. Contemporary singer-songwriter Paul Jansen of Three Hills, Alberta, released the biggest album of his career at the age of 39, Renegade Romantic. Not only did it go gold, but the lead single off the album, Every Little Tear, became a massive hit, reaching #5, and is also still played on retro contemporary radio to this day. Upbeat pop tune Rocket to My Heart reached number 12. The ballad Stand reached number 13, giving him 3 big hits off the album. And lastly, Saskatchewan-based rockers The Northern Pikes released their biggest album to date, the platinum-selling Snow in June, which featured the humorous rock tune She Ain't Pretty, which hit number 6, followed up with Girl with a Problem, which became another big top 10 hit, reaching number 8, and even the third single off the album did very well, was a big success, the mid-tempo ballad Kiss Me You Fool, hitting number 12. And now, to football. The CFL hit financial hardship in the mid-80s, and were barely getting by. However, 1990 saw the league doing slightly better, but still not all that great. Their main avenue of income is actually TV ad revenue, as the CFL on CBC was still garnering really good TV ratings, and even the TSN's coverage on the CFL on cable was a rating success, having their best season so far in covering the league, as they've been doing so since 1987. However, the syndicated Canadian Football Network just wasn't cutting it anymore. Despite good production values, it was a ratings failure and costing the league a lot of money, so they would drop it at the end of this season. Attendance across the league was pretty solid, as Edmonton and Toronto were very strong markets, with Winnipeg, Saskatchewan, and BC also doing quite well. Calgary was so-so. Ottawa had their highest attendance average in nearly a decade. Hamilton, however, had the lowest in team history and lowest in the league. The Western Division was highly competitive again this year, and the reemergence of the Calgary Stampeders as contenders were heavily in place. The team finished 11-6-1 and finished first in the Western Division for the first time since 1971. Amazing. But their dreams of Grey Cup glory, however, were dashed, as the Edmonton Eskimos, who went 16-2 the year prior, finished second at 10-8 due to some late season struggles, but still took out their hated rivals in the Western Finals with a 42-23 win, and made it to the Grey Cup for the 11th time in 20 seasons. However, they were decimated by the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, 50-11. The defending Grey Cup champion Saskatchewan Roughriders finished 9-9. That was actually the same record they had last season. But the Eskies got their revenge from the 1989 upset in the Western semifinals, 43-27. The BC Lions finished dead last with the second straight season with a record of 6-11-1. And now, on with the All-Stars, starting with special teams. First kick returner Derek Crawford of the Calgary Stampeders. A former All-Star with the Memphis Showboats of the USFL back in 1984, he had trouble finding a home for a while despite a brief stint in 1986 with the 49ers, but at last found one with Calgary and the Stampeders. Pure speed and adrenaline was Crawford's game, helping the Stamps special teams excel in many ways and setting up their offense in a great field position. He was the key to Stamps finally starting to find more success and more wins. He could dodge tacklers and even leap above them when he had to. His total 2,762 all-purpose yards was second best in the CFL. 734 kickoff return yards, 796 punt return yards, the latter of which was third best in the CFL, and he led the league in punt return touchdowns with 3 and had 1 on kick return. On top of his returning abilities, he was a top receiver, as his 1,096 yards receiving was 8th best in the CFL. His 11 receiving touchdowns were tied for 6th. His insane 19.2 yards a catch was 4th best in the league. His 15 total touchdowns was 3rd best, and this indeed is his first All-Star selection. And it would actually be his only one. He was key in the Stamps' eventual Grey Cup appearance and subsequent win in 91 and 92 respectively. He had another 1,000-yard receiving season in 1993, and finished his career with the ill-fated American expansion Birmingham Barracudas in 1995. At punter, we stay with Calgary and hometown boy Brent Matic. He led the entire league in punting average with 43.1 yards and was key in burying the opposition deep and able to benefit Calgary's excellent special teams tacklers and help their defense keep teams at bay from gaining yardage. Matic also totaled 5,728 in total punting yards, which is 4th best in the league, and booted 5 punt singles. He knew expertly where to position his kicks, get the right height and distance for his teammates to get to the ball. As I alluded to earlier, Calgary's special teams core gave them a tremendous edge this year when it came to getting advantage and getting wins. This is Matic's second straight and overall divisional selection. And to kicker we go. Robo-kicker, that is, and that's Saskatchewan Roughriders fan favorite, Dave Ridgway. Always popular among Rider Nation fans, Ridgway was one of the best clutch kickers in the game, facing pressure dead on when the game depended on it, and more often than not delivered. So often, in fact, that his 81.9 field goal percentage was second best in the CFL. But even better than that, he tied a CFL record with 233 kicking points. Remarkable. His efficiency is truly what defined him as one of the best in the game of all time in the CFL at his position. His leg definitely seemed robotic, as even in bad weather conditions, strong winds, Ridgway often found a way. This is his 5th selection and also his 4th in a row dating back to 1987. His first was in 1982. And also for Ridgway, it's his 5th career All-Canadian selection, as this is the only All-Canadian berth for the West on special teams. Now we move to defense and the defensive line. That defensive end, we go to the Western champion Edmonton Eskimos, Stuart Hill. One of the best pass rushers of his era, Hill was dead set on zeroing in on his target with a perfect focus of speed, aggression, and outright intensity, driving QBs back for significant losses, making sure they felt his wrath. It was his specialty. And the Edmonton Eskimos' strong defensive line was uncanny, with the league-leading 51 sacks. Hill led the way in that regard with a third of those sacks, with 17, which led the entire CFL. He's also great at sidestepping and evading blockers, almost like an assassin hell-bent on reaching his target without fail. Even running backs who tried to speed past him would pay a hefty price quite often. At times, when he couldn't get the sack, he would pressure a QB enough to make a bad pass and a huge mistake, even causing him to throw a pick, benefiting the Eskies' defense in a huge way. He is a tried and true leader by example, and as a result, and was the runner-up for CFL's most outstanding defensive player. He garners his 4th selection, the first being in his rookie year of 1984, and others followed in 86 and the prior season in 1989. And for the 3rd time in his career, he is named to the All-Canadian team, having done so in 84 and 89. We stick to Alberta and move to Calgary, and their breakout star on defense, 2nd-year defensive end Will Johnson. A consistent, energetic pass rusher, Johnson was a towering presence who could even score up with the best offensive tackles in the game and push through them, or just avoid them altogether with his pure power and sidestepping as a result. And he garnered 16 sacks, 2nd best in the CFL, just one behind Eskimos counterpart Stuart Hill. Calgary's highly improved defense was coming together in a big way, as they were tremendous against the pass, and Johnson was a big reason for that. He could frustrate even the most unflappable and focused QBs in the game. He adds 40 tackles, 2 fumble recoveries, and an interception, making him an all-star for the first time on the path to a great career. And back to Edmonton we go, moving to defensive tackle, and Brett Williams. Again, another towering presence with a bulldozing style. He could put offensive linemen on their backside. And he could also get to the running backs quite often that wouldn't stand a chance getting in his way. His ability to annihilate QBs was evident too, with his 9 sacks, tied for 7th best in the league, as he and the Eskies defensive line were just key to so many victories, including the playoffs. He could jar a ball loose and or be on top of the fumble himself, and his 3 fumble recoveries were also tied for 7th best. He contributed 37 tackles, and because of that, garners his 3rd straight and 4th overall divisional selection, his first being with the Montreal Alouettes back in 1986. And again, we stay in Alberta and back to Calgary and the Stampeders, defensive tackle Kent Warnock. The St. John, New Brunswick native was already popular in Calgary as a member of the Calgary Dinos of the CIAU, winning 2 Vanier Cups in 1983 and 85, and was immensely popular among Stampeders fans. Man, he was an ox out there. 6'7", 270 pounds. Then his blockers would actually have to try to double team him, but it would only work for so long because Warnock had 16 sacks and looked like he could leave QB imprints on the turf. That's tied for 2nd best with teammate Will Johnson. His size and power is one of the reasons why he could get even the best ball carriers to fumble. He recovered 4 of them. That's just tied for 4th best. He garnered 55 tackles, and what was his only All-Star selection of his career? And with that, he actually gets his first and only All-Canadian selection as well. He would lead the Stamps the next 2 seasons to Grey Cup appearances, winning in 1992. He left the team after 1993 and a short stint in BC in 94, where injuries sadly ended his career at the age of 30. Since 2012, however, he has become a defensive line coach for the Calgary Dinos and got himself a 3rd Vanier Cup ring in 2019. Now, we move to the linebacking core, as again, the West takes up 2 out of 4 spots on the defensive line in all Canadian selections. We moved to linebacker, and the BC Lions did their first selection so far here with wonderful Willie Pless, one of the most well-rounded and best all-around defensive players in CFL history. Pless came to BC after 4 seasons with the Argos, where he was an all-star in both 86 and 88, and this is his 3rd selection. To be clear, BC's defense was not good. Pless was pretty much the lone bright spot of the bad core, but he was so good, BC's fate in some games could have been worse. He was a pure tackler, though, through and through. His 107 tackles were 3rd best in the league. He was a master on the blitz, adding pressure to QBs when needed. and it was also a great extra pass cover. He also possessed speed and agility and snagged 5 interceptions. The crazy thing is though, he wasn't as big as most linebackers, which is why he was quite diverse in pass coverage as well. But he could still strategically cause fumbles and recover them. 4 to be exact, tied for 4th best. In addition to his 3rd selection, it's also his 3rd All-Canadian berth. His time with BC, however, was only 1 season. So brief that I can't even find a picture of him playing for the Lions, as you can see here. But he'd moved on to Edmonton, where he became an even bigger star and icon. And for Saskatchewan's first defensive selection, we go to the Rough Riders, linebacker Dan Rashovich. A native of Toronto, Ontario, he began his career in Ottawa, spent a couple seasons with his hometown Argos, before coming to the Green Riders in 1987. He's become one of the team's most popular players due to his hard work ethic and team ethic as well. He led by example and was always determined to play his absolute best at any given moment of the game, no matter how far the chips may be down or how far they may be dominating. He had a career year with 80 tackles, tied for 9th best, 3 fumble recoveries, tied for 7th best. Saskatchewan's defense had its troubles this season quite a fair bit, but he seemed to keep them in games quite often. And for that, he is rewarded his first and only All-Star selection. He would, however, play in the CFL until 1999, spending the rest of his career with Saskatchewan, ending his time in the game at the age of 39. And for the final linebacker selection, we go to badass Danny Bass of the Grey Cup finalist Edmonton Eskimos. Truly one of the all-time great linebackers in Canadian football history as well. He was an intense tackler, would never take his eyes off the ball. He was hard to fool on a fake and could read many offensive patterns. He was an offensive coordinator's worst nightmare. His 105 tackles were 4th best in the league. He could bring you down with a charge or just with the strength of his arms. He also garnered 4 fumble recoveries, tied for 4th best. He's also a superb pass coverage man, garnering 4 picks. It was great at knocking down passes. Again, a multi-purpose defensive specialist, truly one of the greats. Played in his 3rd Grey Cup. And this is his 6th straight selection, dating back to 1985. His first 2, however, adding on to that, were in 82 and 83, the Calgary Stampeders. However, this would be his last. And with that, Bass, who was a year removed from winning his only Outstanding Defensive Player award, garnered his 6th career All-Canadian selection, going all the way back to Calgary again in 82 and 83, and with the Eskies in 86, and the last 3 seasons consecutively. He played in the 1991 season, still with Edmonton, and retiring afterwards. The West takes 2 out of 3 linebacker spots, and now we move to the secondary. And first at corner is Andre Francis of the Edmonton Eskimos. One of the most grossly underrated covermen in the game, very seldom ever got his just due, but he does this year with his 2nd straight and overall All-Star selection. Early on in his career, he was overlooked due to his height of 5'8", but his speed definitely more than compensated for that. He could keep up with the best and fastest receivers in the league. He snagged 7 interceptions, tied for 6th best in the league. But the other thing that he does very well when he steals the ball is you best bring him down immediately, because he'll gain an extra 15 or 20 yards upon the interception. He's also just good at keeping the ball away from receivers. He'd always been productive and excellent in his days in Montreal and BC, but Edmonton was where he was in a system where his skills were best utilized. And next up, still sticking with the Grey Cup runner-up Eskimos, and at the opposite corner was Keith Gooch. He and Francis on each side made the opposing receivers, no matter how good they may be, right for the pickings when it came to passing against the Eskimos, which complemented their pressuring pass rush up front. Gooch had spent 6 seasons with the Lions, being an All-Star in 87, this being his 2nd selection. His 7 picks are tied with Francis for 6th best, and in return 1 for a touchdown. His speed was on point as well. Gooch could also make difficult tackles, and he could hit pretty hard too, as he could bring down any receiver if a catch was made hard, maybe even causing an incompletion or a fumble. And hey, he could also make sure, just plain and simple like Francis, if a catch wasn't made at all due to just his great coverage. He played in his 3rd Grey Cup game, having played in 2 with the Lions in 85 and 88, winning a ring in the former. He retired at the age of 31 after the season. At halfback, we moved to Saskatchewan and Richie Hall. The brightest spot in the Rough Riders defense, perhaps. His speed was an asset, as his size got him overlooked, much like Francis in his career early on, but made a nice home in the CFL. His 6 picks were tied for 10th best, and while that is impressive, even if a catch was made, he'd never let them get far. His 62 tackles were a sign of that. He played with a great deal of heart and was loved very much among fans of the Rider Nation, and he loved to really get fans of the game, rallying them into it. He also had 2 fumble recoveries and was the recipient this year of the 1990 Tom Pate Memorial Award, given yearly to the player who best exemplifies sportsmanship and contribution to the community, which he did as being very active in many local causes in Regina. This was Hall's fourth selection, the first two coming in 83 and 86, and they were with the Stampeders, and got his first as a rider in 88. This would be his last, as he would retire after the 1991 season, and has had an immensely successful coaching career, winning 2 Grey Cups as a defensive coordinator for the Riders, and 2 in the same position for the Bombers, where he actually still works to this day. Well, we return to Calgary and the Stamps, as they themselves had a dangerous secondary, and David McCreary. Since joining the Stamps in 1987, he has been one of their top secondary men during some tough times. A great pure cover man able to read patterns expertly, was great at causing incompletions, but was great at knocking down passes and causing picks, as he had 6, tied for 10th in the league, and returned 1 for a touchdown. Whether that's a long ball or a short ball, he was dangerous, and was key in the Stamps' evolving defense. This will be his only All-Star selection, as he joined Saskatchewan in 1991, and his career ended at the age of 28 due to nagging injuries. And the last defensive selection for the West, and at secondary, is also from the Stampeders, and at his safety, Greg Peterson. A longtime Calgary-born fan favorite since joining the team in 1984, he played his best through thick and thin on this team, and was key in their rise out of the ashes in the CFL. Strong both physically and mentally, he's also one of the fastest safeties in the league as well. He also made many jarring hits, shaking the ball loose, and garnered 58 tackles. He had 5 interceptions, a career high, one of which he returned for a touchdown. This was his first and only All-Star selection. And it was his first and only All-Canadian selection to boot. He played 2 more seasons in Calgary, finally collecting a Grey Cup ring in 1992, retiring thereafter. This was the West's only secondary selection on the All-Canadian team, and overall just taking up 5 of 12 spots on the defense. Just 1 short of half, which actually they garnered in 1989. Now, if we move to offense and start with the Trenchmen, the offensive line. And on this side of the ball, we are back to the Grey Cup runner-up Edmonton Eskimos and Rod Conop. A hard-working center who had great leadership skills, was loved by fans in Edmonton. And indeed, pardon the pun, he was the centerpiece that allowed three-dimensional star quarterback Tracy Hand to thrive in his strategy. And hey, he was no stranger to being the man on the snap to such legends as Damon Allen, Matt Dunnigan, and Warren Moon, all of whom are Hall of Famers along with him. And I hope they realize how much Conop allowed them to make progress and dominance in their careers and make their magic happen. Tremendous reflexes and quickness, still as efficient as ever. He played in his 4th Grey Cup game this year. This is his 3rd All-Star selection, having achieved the feat in 1987 and the prior year in 1989. And it's also his 3rd All-Canadian selection. We stay in Alberta, but move to Calgary and the Stampeders, with a former Eskimo in Leo Blanchard at offensive guard. Blanchard had size, strength, and aggression. He was key for many years in the Eskimos' dominance on offense, like former teammate Conop blocking for Hall of Fame QBs dating all the way back to Tom Wilkinson. So much so, he had 5 consecutive All-Star selections from 82 to 86, and this is his first since then, now making it 6th in his first in Calgary. Calgary's offense was going to be dominant, and quarterback Danny Barrett's scrambling game out of the pocket, time to throw to receivers, relied heavily on Blanchard. At 35, he was key in the team's growth and emergence as the 1990s began. This, however, would be Blanchard's last All-Star selection. He retired after the 1991 season, playing in his 7th Grey Cup. And staying at guard, we go to the Saskatchewan Roughriders and the all-time great Roger Aldag. In his mid-30s and his 15th season, Aldag had bled green, having spent his entire career with the Roughriders. A bulldozing-style guard and ever-dangerous rider offense was built on his back. Well, there was concerns early in his career about, again, his height. He silenced critics quick, and how he was just an all-time amazing marvel at his position. He could overpower opposing defensive linemen who outmatched him in size. He provided the protection his QBs needed and opened up blocks for numerous runners to speed up the middle. This is his 5th straight All-Star selection and 7th of his career, the first 2 coming in 1982 and 83. And he also made the All-Canadian team for the 5th consecutive and overall time. And we go back to Calgary offensive tackle and the Stamps' ever-popular fan favorite, Lloyd Fairbanks. 37 years old in his 16th season. He's one of the best trenchmen in the game and of all time as well. An ageless wonder, as along with fellow veteran Blanchard, made a superb O-line in Calgary. Any rush end would pay a price getting in Lloyd's way, and outside linebackers attempting a blitz wouldn't get very far, as his powerful nature and precise focus, as well as his ability to read a defense, helped him excel. He was an Alberta boy and Alberta tough. This is his 7th All-Star selection. His first 3 came in 78, 79, and 82 with the Stampeders, and then had 3 straight as a member of the Montreal Concords/Alouettes from 1984 to 86. After a 2-season stint in Hamilton, he returned to Calgary in 1989. This would be his last All-Star selection. He retired for the following season, making his only Grey Cup appearance. And now we move to the lowly Lions and their big bright spot, offensive tackle Jim Mills. This veteran All-Star offensive line is rounded out by this young gun who is actually age 29. A popular home Vancouver boy, he's been an asset since joining the Lions in 1986. Had the best year of his career. A massive towering 6'9" and over 275 pounds, he was a wall but was also very mobile. Showed great agility for his size. He also made it look effortless when it came to blocking, but make no mistake about it, he was working hard to make sure his offense could produce, which was the bright spot on BC. It helped new quarterback Doug Flutie adjust to the Canadian game in his first CFL season, and Flutie's expert running game soared because of it. It also provided a great path for Chris Skinner as well, and for the Lions' short pass strategy, Mills was the key. Despite their 6 wins, the CFL recognized just how much this team relied on him. And that's why, in addition to his 2nd All-Star selection of his career and 2nd in 3 years, he was named the CFL's most outstanding offensive lineman for the very first time. And that also gives him his 2nd All-Canadian selection in 3 seasons. And the West gets 3 out of 5 on the offensive line. And now we move to the receiving corps. And at slapback, we're back to Edmonton and the Eskimos and the awesome and multi-dynamic wonder that is Craig Ellis, easy for me to say. He truly was a marvelous wonder, a combination of size, speed, quick moves, efficient hands, a great eye for the ball, fooling defenses, long and short patterns. He was the complete package. A true playmaker on that field with 1,654 receiving yards, 2nd best of the CFL, while his 106 receptions were far and away tops in the league. He could fool any secondary, be it short or long. Ellis was all about gaining yardage, which was key in the Eskimos' success this year. He also found the end zone often with 17 touchdowns, all of which were receiving, 2nd best in both receiving and overall. He could also block when needed to be. He truly does not get the recognition he deserves as one of the most dynamic and 4-dimensional players of his era. He began his career as a running back. He played a single game for the Bombers, then a brief stint in Calgary. Then Saskatchewan is where he became an All-Star for the first time, again, as a running back and a kick returner. He went to the Argos for a brief stay in 1986 and actually spent 2 seasons in the NFL. And then, he took 1988 off and returned as an Eskimo, where he got his 2nd All-Star selection in 1989 and gets his 3rd this year. And he was the runner-up for CFL's most outstanding player. And for the 2nd straight, and overall, and last time, he was an All-Canadian. He stayed with Edmonton until 1992, but retired after a single game with the Argos in 1993. And next up at slotback is the dominant Saskatchewan Rough Rider slotback, the great Ray Elgard. A driving force in the offense, he joined the Riders during their rough days in the 1980s, but as he thrived, the team continued to be kind of built around him, as he evolved as one of the best in his position in the league and in the league history. A truly aggressive presence who could impose his will against anyone. He didn't take crap from anybody, as they say, and anybody who stood in his way, they would often learn the hard way not to do that. 6'3", well over 200 pounds. When Elgard caught a pass, he was hard to bring down. As even the best on defense, even linebackers had trouble with that task. Elgard's ability to catch short passes and gain major yardage was an asset. He wasn't afraid to go up the middle either and played a fearless style. He also had a great ability to get open in any position and make simple plays into big ones. He was 3rd in the league in receiving yards with 1,494. The 4th millennium mark of his career. His 94 receptions were 2nd best behind Ellis, and caught 11 touchdowns. This is also his 4th All-Star selection, achieving the feat in 85, 87, and 88. All this led Elgard to winning the CFL's Most Outstanding Canadian Award for the 2nd time in 3 seasons. He won it in 88. Wouldn't be his last either. And now we move to wide receiver positions, and we head back to BC and the Lions with their big spark on offense, wide receiver Ray Alexander. After beginning his career with an unsuccessful stint with the Denver Broncos in 1984, he came to the Stampeders in 1985, was an All-Star in their resurgence in 1986. But then the NFL came calling after that big year as he spent 3 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. His second season there was actually quite successful, but the team overall was awful and he was part of their changes, plus injuries and inconsistencies. And he's now back in the CFL, and the BC Lions picking up right where he left off, achieving his second All-Star selection with 1,120 yards receiving, which is 7th best in the league, 65 receptions, which was tied for 8th best. His 9 touchdown catches were tied for 9th, as he averaged an awesome 17.2 yards a catch, which was 7th best. His communications with quarterbacks was top-notch. He ran amazing patterns and could burn the best defenses on the long ball. He was key in keeping BC's offense together, and his height gave him great ability and great reach to catch difficult passes. And he was no stranger to making highlight reels. And at the final wide receiver and receiver position overall, we go to Saskatchewan and the Rough Riders' top wideout, Don Narcisse. A true master of consistency, Narcisse could make just 1 or 2 catches a game, but make them both count in a big way. As a matter of fact, he's currently in the midst of what would be his insane 216 consecutive games with a catch. This is still very early on in that streak. He's a marvel out there. For, one of the most dangerous receiving cores in the game. In total, he caught 86 passes, 4th best in the league, and his 1,129 receiving yards was 6 and caught 9 touchdowns, tied for 9. He was a hard worker, resilient, durable, amazing stamina, and tremendous athleticism. He's one of the cornerstones that helped build the Riders from a proverbial joke to league elite. He had speed and was mainly known for his precision, however, and quick thinking, and can run any given pattern. And this is his 2nd straight and overall All-Star selection. And that also goes for his All-Canadian selection, achieving his 2nd straight there as well, as the West has 1 slot on the wideout, 1 on slot back, taking up 2 out of 4 receiver spots. Now, we move to the backfield. And we move back to Grey Cup runner-ups, the Edmonton Eskimos. And Reggie Taylor, a young speedster who was very unpredictable in his play. He was initially drafted by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers of the NFL in 1987, but didn't make the cut. But he showed some promise with a 1-year stint with the Lions and came to the Eskimos, where he led the league in rushing the year prior in 1989. Despite missing 6 games this year due to injuries, he achieved his 2nd straight All-Star selection. He ran for 662 yards in 12 games, which was still very impressive, 8th best in the league, and averaged an excellent 6.5 yards a carry, which was 4th best in the league. The guy had more moves than a breakdancer, and exhibited them to great success and was very popular among Eskimo fans. He also added 348 yards receiving, amazing at catching short passes, picking up big yards, and also picking up first downs on short yardage plays. This is his 2nd straight and overall and last All-Star selection. Taylor played 1 more season and left the game at the age of 27. And now we stick to the backfield once again and stick to Edmonton and the Eskimos and fullback Big Blake Marshall, a native of Guelph, Ontario, and former Heck Crichton Trophy winner as the best college player in Canada. He'd been a valued asset to the Eskimos since joining them in 1987. 6'1", 230 pounds, his abilities to block for his fellow backs and quarterbacks was always something that helped Edmonton achieve victory and their strategy, especially since they had many running QBs as well. But when he got the ball, he was also very dangerous. He carried it for 603 yards, which was 10th best, as Edmonton's dangerous running game that included Taylor and quarterback Tracy Ham was just almost unstoppable in many games. He was great in short yardage situations and in the red zone, as his 12 rushing touchdowns were best in the league. He averaged 5 yards a carry and overall made his presence felt no matter what the task, and added 252 yards receiving. This is his breakout year in his first selection. And it was also his first All-Canadian selection. So the West takes 1 out of 2 Canadian All-Canadian backfield selections, and now for the final All-Star selection, again the position that gets the most attention, be it good or bad, but a lot of good headlines surrounded this man this year. And at quarterback, back to Rider Nation, back to Saskatchewan Roughriders, dominant pivot, Kent Austin. No doubt one of the most strategic quarterbacks of his era, always thinking a few steps ahead, but yet always staying focused on the task at hand on a given down or play. But he knew how to get to his ultimate goals of getting points on the board. He could exploit the weakest points of even the strongest defensive systems, and that's what made him perhaps the most dangerous quarterback in the game at the time. He led the league in 3 major categories: passing yardage with 4,604, and that helped, it certainly helped having the most dangerous receiving core in the game with Narcisse and Elgard, as well as rookie Lucius Floyd stepping up for injured Jeff Fairholm, who still played well when he was healthy. He also led in completions with 360, led in completion percentage with 58.3. His 27 touchdown passes were third best in the league, and since joining the Riders in '87, he quickly proved his worth. And while he had to fight for his starting job, as the Riders did have a couple talented QBs in the late '80s, he eventually won it, leading into the Grey Cup last season, and having a superstar season this year. It was his first and only All-Canadian selection of his career. But it was also his lone All-Canadian selection this year too. He was still an excellent QB in the league for the majority of his career. After another 4,000 plus, then 6,000 plus, then 5,000 plus yard passing seasons, he departed for the Riders after 1993 and went to BC in 1994 with another 4,000 yard season and a second Grey Cup ring to add. However, after a tough one-year stints each in Toronto and Winnipeg, he retired with the 1996 season and went on to a very successful coaching career in the CFL, picking up 2 more Grey Cups, one with the Argos as offensive coordinator, and another with the Riders as head coach in 2007. And as head coach of the Hamilton Tiger Cats, he led the team to back-to-back Grey Cup appearances in 2013 and 2014. These days, he coaches at Auburn University as a quarterback coach. And with that, the West takes up 7 out of 12 All-Star selections on the offensive side, just above half. One less, however, than the year prior, but they still went out offensive selections on the All-Canadian side for the 3rd straight season. Out of the 27 All-Stars, a massive 10 have been inducted into Canadian Football Hall of Fame, more than a third. The first of this All-Star class to be inducted was Dan Bass, the Eskimos, in 2000. He only had to wait a few years after being eligible. 2 years later, 2 Riders made the Hall. Roger Aldag, the superstar old lineman, had to wait a short bit, while Ray Elgard was the first ballot, and they both made it in 2002. A year later, another Rider, robo-kicker Dave Ridgway, only had to wait 1 extra year and made it in 2003. BC's Willie Pless was an easy first ballot vote in 2005. In that same year, Rod Conop of the Eskimos made it after waiting a couple years. Jim Mills of the Lions had to wait a while, but finally took his rightful place in 2009. Don Narcisse of Saskatchewan inexplicably waited nearly half a decade, which should have been a no-contest first ballot induction, but made it in 2010. Will Johnson of the Stamps also waited a ridiculous long amount of time to get enshrined, but made it in 2021. And 2 years later, after waiting over 25 years, another Stamp star, Lloyd Fairbanks, made it into the Hall in 2023. Hey, 4 Riders and 2 each for the Lions, Stamps, and Eskimos. Wow. Now, as impressive as 10 out of 27 is, it could be, and in some cases should be, a lot more. Especially for the Eskimos. Stuart Hill with 126 career sacks should definitely be inducted and is way long overdue. Brett Williams is one of the best tackles of his era, has 94 career sacks, and is a 5-time All-Star. Now, Andre Francis, retired as one of the all-time interception leaders, but was overlooked due to his lack of awards, and overlooked almost his whole career in the way as one of the best defensive backs of his era. Craig Ellis seems to be given a second look in his work in hindsight. Despite only a few All-Star selections, he was always statistically consistent and sometimes dominant, but is likely seen in the Hall of Really Good. As for the Riders, Richie Hall was a 4-time All-Star in his 9 seasons. He should definitely take some consideration. And some arguments can be made for Kent Austin, who was statistically dominant for about 5 or 6 seasons, but some say his lack of awards is a problem. But many point to other quarterbacks such as Danny McManus, who was somewhat similar but had a longer career. But the fact that star O-lineman of the Stamps, Leo Blanchard, isn't in the Hall of Fame is utterly moronic. 6-time All-Star, 5-time Grey Cup champion who played in 7 Grey Cups. Also, a valid argument can be made for Ray Alexander of the Lions. Yeah, he only played 8 seasons, but he had 8,800 yards career receiving. Unbelievable. And 5 of them were 1,000-yard seasons. Some Hall of Famers got in with less. And a 4-time All-Star with a Grey Cup ring. He should definitely be considered. The final totals see the top 3 teams just barely apart, and they're pretty much in good positions. The Grey Cup runner Eskimos led the way with 9. Excellent on both sides of the ball. They garnered 4 selections on offense, and led the way on defense in the division with 5 total. Just one behind them, however, is the first-place Calgary Stampeders with 8. Their revamped year saw them garner 2 on offense, 4 on defense, and thanks in large part to their incredible secondary and defensive line, of course, and 2 on special teams, another place where they excel probably better than almost anyone in the league. Third place Rough Riders are also 3rd in selections with 7. Their dominant offense ties the Eskies with 4 selections. Their defense wasn't that great, but they still grabbed 2, and 1 on special teams. And dead last is BC, who was also dead last in the West, with 3. 2 on offense, 1 on defense. Considering the talent in the West, in this era, it's easy to see why the 3 winning clubs were all so close and tight-knit. And I'd say it's a very fair list this year for sure. And well, that does it for a look at Part 1 of the 1990 CFL All-Stars, the Western Division. In Part 2, we'll cover the East, led by the Grey Cup champions, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Like and share the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, I'll see ya!